So hello again. This is the third talk now in this series of talks on the Buddha. So we know very little about the early life of the Buddha to be. Really just a few brief anecdotes that he himself recounted to his disciples. We know a little bit more about the time he spent as a homeless wanderer in the 6 years before his enlightenment. But again, it's mostly the Buddha's own account of that time, as he later described it to his disciples, that we rely on. But from the time of his enlightenment, stretching over 45 years until the time of his death at 80 years old, we know a great deal more. His many disciples would remember the stories and accounts of his meetings with people and the teachings he gave. They'd remember them and recount them to each other and collect them together, and in time quite systematically make sure that all were remembered and passed on down actually in an oral tradition that only started to be written down after about 300 years. So it's on this very rich store of stories of the Buddha from this oral tradition that I'm going to be drawing on in the remaining talks. So in the first two talks, I followed a fairly chronological account of the life of the Buddha to be through to his enlightenment and his teaching of the first disciples, up to that point where he sent out the first 60 disciples to teach for the welfare and benefit of the many. But from now on, I'm not going to be following such a chronological pattern. I'm really going to be just telling the stories that I feel drawn to tell, and where I know from the traditional account where they fit in those 45 years of teachings, I'll let you know. So today we're looking at the story of Meghiya and events that took place about 13 years after the Enlightenment. So Meghiya was with the Buddha as his attendant, and they were spending the rainy season in the Saddhaloka mountains. At the start of the story, Meghiya goes to the Buddha in the early morning and asks his permission to go to the nearby village of Jantu to beg for his meal, his daily meal. The Buddha agrees. Meghiya goes to the village, begs silently from door to door. When he's got enough food, he sits and silently eats. And after he's eaten, he walks along by the river Kimikala to exercise his legs, we're told. So it was the rainy season, he was in retreat, probably doing a lot of meditation, so a bit of exercise would come in very useful. As he was walking by the river, he came across a beautiful mango grove. It was shady, peaceful, the sound of the river in the background, the scent of the trees. Meghiya thought, this is it, the perfect spot, the perfect place to gain enlightenment. He hurried back to the Buddha and told him about the mango grove and asked his permission to go to the mango grove to meditate and strive for enlightenment. But he was disappointed. The Buddha didn't share his enthusiasm for the mango grove. Just wait, Meghiya. Just wait till another monk comes. But Meghiya wasn't going to be put off. He put his request again to the Buddha. But you've done everything that you need to do, everything that's to be done, whilst I have so much to do. Please give me your blessings to go to the mango grove and strive for enlightenment. Just wait, Meghiya. Just wait till another monk comes. But no, Meghiya couldn't wait. Again, he put his request to the Buddha. All right, Meghiya, you talk about striving. Off you go. You go to the mango grove and strive for enlightenment. So off went Meghiya, very happy. He'd got his way. He went deep into the mango grove, found the perfect tree, and settled down for a good session of meditation, sure that enlightenment wasn't far off and that he'd soon be rising almost effortlessly into blissful, expansive states of mind. And what happened? Meghiya found his mind overwhelmed by thoughts of craving and desire, thoughts of hatred, cruel thoughts. He struggled and struggled, but he couldn't get beyond them. What's going on? He asked himself. I've given up everything to follow a spiritual path. I've become a monk. I've become a disciple of the Buddha. I've found this beautiful mango grove to meditate. And yet sitting here, my mind is overwhelmed with desire, hatred, enmity, cruelty. This isn't right. This shouldn't be happening. I don't know if there's anything familiar in this story. We can plan the perfect weekend in the countryside, in nature. We can plan the perfect holiday. Sunshine, beach, warm sea. But it ends up not being quite perfect because, along with our suitcase or rucksack, we take our own mind. Humbled, confused by the experience, Meghiya went back to the Buddha. The Buddha was kind but firm in his response. He said, "Listen, Meghiya, when the heart's release is immature, there are 5 things that bring maturity." This beautiful phrase that the Buddha uses, when the heart's release is immature. And he talks about this maturing of the heart's release. So what are these 5 things that bring about the maturing of the heart's release? The first, the Buddha tells Meghiya, is spiritual friendship, kalyana mitrata, friendship, human connection with those on the path, especially those further ahead on the path who can share their experience with us. Our Dharma practice needs to be rooted in our humanity, in our connection with others. Also, we may be able to fool ourselves as to how spiritually developed we are, but hopefully we won't be able to fool our friends. So when the heart's release is immature, spiritual friendship is the first thing that leads to its maturing. Then secondly, living ethically, training in the precepts. Training implies dedication, effort. The Buddha says to Meghiya, you must be seeing danger in the slightest fault. So not excusing ourselves, recognizing how the mind works, recognizing that if we do something unskillful once, it becomes easier to do it again, and even easier to do it the next time. And similarly, if we do something skillful once, it becomes easier to do it a second time and again. So when the heart's release is immature, this is the second thing that leads to its maturing. Thirdly, always having access to talk that leads to an opening of the heart and mind and to deepening awareness. Talk that encourages letting go, giving up, peace, freedom, enlightenment. So talk on wanting little, contentment, solitude, energy, morality, meditation, wisdom. Talk on liberation and knowledge and vision of things as they really are. Buddhism puts a lot of emphasis on the power of speech in shaping how we think and who we become. And we often underestimate this. We just think of of all the conversations then we've had today, how many of those conversations we've had were about what is of deepest value and most important to us? And we probably all recognise the relief that it can be to talk about what really matters. So when the heart's release is immature, this is the third thing that can lead to its maturing. Fourthly, the monk should be energetic in overcoming the unhelpful, the unskillful, and developing the skillful. They should be consistent, steady in their effort. There's that analogy of a kettle of water. If taken on and off the flame, the water never boils. We can blow hot and cold. So the importance of steadiness, consistency, persistence in our spiritual life. No days off in the spiritual life when we can just forget about ethics, forget about our values. So when the heart's release is immature, energy, effort is the fourth thing that leads to its maturity. And fifthly, a monk needs to be cultivating the wisdom of the Buddhas, reflecting on how everything is consistently, constantly arising and passing away in dependence on conditions, seeing more and more clearly the way to an end of suffering. So the importance of knowing the teachings, having a clear understanding on them, and reflecting on them consistently and deeply. When the heart's release is immature, this is the fifth thing that leads to its maturity. So these are the 5 things that lead to the maturity that allows for the heart's release. And the Buddha continued, when someone has spiritual friends, good companions in the Dharma life, then the other 4 will naturally follow from that. So the story of Meghiya, the Buddha's teaching to a young monk living 2,500 years ago. But I think a sense that what the Buddha taught Meghiya is very alive, immediate, down to earth, and something that we can very readily apply to our own attempts to live a Dharma life in the circumstances of the modern world.